Two people. Same bank. Same year. Both walking out with $200,000 in debt. The first person used that debt to buy a house in a growing neighborhood. The house generates $2,400 a month in rental income. The mortgage costs $1,600. Every month, $800 flows into their pocket while a tenant pays down their loan. The asset appreciates. The debt shrinks. Their net worth climbs. The second person used that $200,000 across a car loan, credit card balances, a personal loan for a kitchen renovation, and a student loan for a degree that never paid what they expected. Every month, $2,100 leaves their account in minimum payments, on things that are worth less than they paid or worth nothing at all. Their net worth falls. Same amount of debt. Completely opposite outcomes. The difference is not discipline. It is not income. It is not luck. It is understanding. Specifically, understanding the one question that separates every debt decision wealthy people make from every debt decision that keeps ordinary people trapped. That question is not, can I afford the payment? It is, will this debt produce more than it costs? If the answer is yes, debt is a tool. If the answer is no, debt is a trap. And the trap is disguised so well, normalized so completely, that most people spend their entire adult lives paying for things they no longer own, no longer remember, and no longer need. This video is about learning to see the difference. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Before we go further, let's define what debt actually is, not emotionally but mechanically. Debt is the use of someone else's money today in exchange for paying more of your own money tomorrow. That's it. The lender gives you purchasing power now. You return that purchasing power plus interest over time. The interest rate is the cost of borrowing. And that cost changes everything. At 3% interest, the kind of rate you might see on a mortgage during a low-rate environment, borrowing $100,000 costs you $3,000 per year to hold. If that $100,000 is working in an asset earning 8%, you are netting 5% on money that isn't even yours. That is leverage working for you. At 24% interest, the kind of rate you see on most credit cards, borrowing $10,000 costs you $2,400 per year just to hold the balance. There is no asset on earth that reliably returns 24% annually. That is leverage working against you. The interest rate is the terrain. Low rates create opportunity. High rates create quicksand. The wealthy borrow at low rates to buy assets that return more than the cost. Everyone else borrows at high rates to buy things that return nothing. Understanding this one mechanic, interest rate versus asset return, is the entire foundation of using debt the way wealthy people use it. Bad debt has 4 characteristics. Once you know them, you will see bad debt everywhere, in your own finances, in the finances of people around you, in the advertising that makes bad debt feel like a reward. Characteristic 1. It finances things that lose value. A car the moment you drive it off the lot. A vacation the moment you board the plane. Furniture the moment it's assembled. Clothing the moment it's worn. These purchases become worth less every day. The debt attached to them does not. Characteristic 2. It carries a high interest rate. Credit cards at 22 to 29%. Buy now, pay later products with deferred interest that kicks in retroactively. Payday loans at rates that would be illegal if they were called something else. Personal loans for lifestyle purchases at 15 to 20%. Any rate significantly above expected investment returns is extracting wealth from you. Characteristic 3. It is normalized. This is the most dangerous characteristic because normalized debt stops triggering alarm. Everyone has a car payment. Everyone carries a credit card balance sometimes. Everyone takes out a personal loan when something big comes up. The universality of bad debt is exactly what makes it invisible as a problem. The average American carries over $6,000 in credit card debt. That $6,000 at 22% costs $1,320 a year in interest alone. Money that produces nothing, builds nothing, and compounds against you every single month. Characteristic 4. It is recurring. Bad debt doesn't end. People pay off a credit card and spend it back up. They pay off a car loan and immediately finance a newer car. The payments never stop because the behavior that created them never changes. Bad debt is not a transaction. It is a lifestyle. And that lifestyle has an enormous lifetime cost that almost nobody calculates. Good debt is rarer than most people think, and it has 3 characteristics that separate it from everything in the previous section. Characteristic 1. It finances something that produces income or appreciates in value. The clearest example is real estate. A rental property generates monthly income. Over time, in most markets, it appreciates. The tenant's rent covers the mortgage. The equity builds. The asset grows. You use someone else's money, the bank's, to acquire an asset that now works for you. But real estate is not the only example. A business loan that funds equipment allowing you to take on contracts you couldn't otherwise fulfill. A student loan used carefully. For a degree in a field with strong demonstrated earning potential. A line of credit used to purchase inventory that generates more revenue than the borrowing cost. In every case, the debt is funding something that produces more than it costs. Characteristic 2. The interest rate is low enough that returns on the financed asset can reasonably exceed it. This is the math that matters. If you borrow at 7% to buy a rental property that returns 10% annually between appreciation and income, the math works. If you borrow at 7% to fund a business that generates 20% margins, the math works spectacularly. Good debt is only good when the spread between the borrowing cost and the return is positive. When that spread disappears, when rates rise, when returns fall, when circumstances change, good debt can become bad debt quickly. This is why wealthy people monitor their debt closely. They're not managing balances. They're managing spreads. Characteristic 3. It has a clear, defensible repayment plan that doesn't depend on optimistic projections. Good debt is underwhelming in its conservatism. Wealthy people do not take on debt assuming everything will go right. They model what happens when things go wrong. Can the rental still cover the mortgage if it's vacant for 2 months? Can the business still service the loan if revenue drops 20%? If the answer is no, the debt isn't good yet. It's just hopeful. Here is the mindset shift that separates every debt decision a wealthy person makes from every debt decision that traps ordinary people. Ordinary people ask, can I afford the monthly payment? Wealthy people ask, what is this debt producing and is that production worth the cost? These are completely different questions. The first question accepts the debt as a given and evaluates only whether it fits in a budget. The second question evaluates whether the debt should exist at all. A $50,000 car loan with a $900 monthly payment. An ordinary person asks whether $900 fits in the budget. A wealthy person asks what that $50,000 is producing. The answer, comfortable transportation, perhaps some status, does not meet the bar for taking on debt. If you want the car, pay cash. If you can't pay cash, buy less car. A $250,000 rental property loan with a $1,600 monthly mortgage. An ordinary person might ask whether they can afford $1,600 a month. A wealthy person asks what the property produces. If it generates $2,200 in rent, covers its own expenses, and appreciates over time, the debt is working. It is not a cost. It is leverage. Wealthy people also understand that debt has an opportunity cost beyond the interest rate. Every dollar tied up in a monthly car payment is a dollar that cannot be invested. Every dollar in a credit card minimum payment is a dollar that cannot go into a Roth IRA. The payment itself isn't the only cost. The foregone compounding is the hidden cost, and it is enormous over time. A $600 monthly car payment sustained for 6 years costs $43,200 in payments. But if that $600 had been invested monthly at 8% for 6 years, it would have grown to roughly $56,000. The true cost of that car loan is not $43,200. It is $43,200 plus the $56,000 in investment growth that never happened. That car cost nearly $100,000 in true economic terms. Wealthy people run this calculation before signing anything. Most people never run it at. Leverage is the formal term for using borrowed money to amplify returns. And it is the tool that explains why wealthy people often have more debt than ordinary people, while simultaneously building wealth faster. Here is how leverage works in its clearest form. You have $50,000 to invest. Option A, you put all $50,000 into a property worth $50,000, you own it free and clear. It appreciates 5% in a year. You gain $2,500. Return on your investment, 5%. Option B, you use that same $50,000 as a down payment on a $250,000 property, borrowing $200,000 at 6.5% interest. The same 5% appreciation applies to the full $250,000. generating $12,500 in value. After your annual mortgage interest cost of roughly $13,000 on the loan, you are near break-even on cash flow. But your equity grew by $12,500 on a $50,000 investment. Return on your actual cash: 25%. The leverage amplified your return by 5 times. This is why the wealthy accumulate assets while carrying debt. They are not borrowing because they cannot afford to pay cash. They are borrowing because the math of leverage, when used on the right assets at the right rates, produces returns that cash purchases cannot match. The risks are real and they deserve to be named clearly. Leverage amplifies losses as well as gains. If that property drops 10% in value, a $25,000 loss on a $250,000 asset, your $50,000 equity absorbs the entire loss. You lose 50% of your investment on a 10% market drop. This is why wealthy people are selective about what they leverage and how much. They do not leverage volatile assets. They do not leverage at rates that leave no margin for error. And they do not leverage personal consumption, cars, vacations, luxury items, ever. Leverage is a tool. Like every tool, it builds things in skilled hands and causes damage in unskilled ones. Understanding it clearly is how you become the skilled hand. Everything we've covered so far is conceptual. These are the practical rules, the non-negotiables that separate people who use debt to build wealth from people who use debt to fund a lifestyle they eventually cannot sustain. Rule 1. Never borrow to consume. Cars, vacations, furniture, clothing, electronics. If you cannot pay cash for it, you cannot afford it. This rule has no exceptions. The moment you start financing consumption, you are paying tomorrow's money for yesterday's pleasure. The item depreciates. The debt remains. Rule 2. The monthly payment is not the cost. The total interest paid over the life of the loan plus the opportunity cost of every dollar in that payment is the cost. Always calculate the full number before signing. It will change the decision almost every time. Rule 3. High-interest debt is a financial emergency. If you carry credit card debt at 20% or above, eliminating it is your highest priority investment. There is no stock, no index fund, no real estate deal that reliably returns 20% after tax. Paying off 20% debt is a guaranteed 20% return. Treat it with the urgency that math demands. Rule 4. Borrow only at rates where realistic returns can exceed the cost. Roughly 7% has historically been achievable for diversified long-term investing. Any debt below 7% might reasonably be carried while investing the difference. Any debt above 7% should typically be eliminated before new investments are added. This is not a rigid rule, personal circumstances vary, but it is a useful framework. Rule 5. Always know your debt-to-income ratio. This is your total monthly debt payments divided by your gross monthly income. Above 36% is where lenders start getting nervous. Above 43% is where financial flexibility disappears. Keep this number in your head. Every new debt you take on changes it. Know what it is before you sign anything. Rule 6. Good debt is not permanent. The goal is always to move from debt-funded assets to fully owned assets over time. Leverage is a phase, a tool for acceleration, not a permanent state. Wealthy people pay down debt strategically as their wealth grows, reducing exposure and increasing the percentage of assets they own outright. Here is the practical exercise that makes everything in this video actionable. Sit down with every debt you currently carry. Write each one down with 4 pieces of information: the balance, the interest rate, what the debt financed, and whether that thing is producing income or appreciating in value. Now evaluate each debt against the question we started with. Is this producing more than it costs? For every debt where the answer is clearly yes, a mortgage on a rental property generating positive cash flow, a business loan funding profitable operations, that debt is working. Monitor it. Optimize the rate if you can, but do not panic about it. For every debt where the answer is clearly no, credit cards, car loans, personal loans for consumption, those are your priority targets. Rank them by interest rate. The highest rate debt is costing you the most and should be attacked first. For every debt in the middle, a mortgage on your primary residence, a student loan at a modest rate, the calculus is more nuanced. Your primary home is not an investment in the pure sense. It does not generate income and you cannot easily liquidate part of it. But it does build equity, often appreciates, and provides housing you would otherwise rent. These debts are not emergencies. They are long-term commitments to be managed thoughtfully. This audit takes 30 minutes. Most people have never done it. Most people manage their debt by checking whether payments clear each month, not by evaluating whether each debt is working for them or against them. Knowing which category every debt falls into changes how you prioritize, how you allocate extra money, and how you think about taking on new debt in the future. Let me bring this together with a concrete lifetime comparison. Person A uses debt the way most people do. They finance 4 cars over 30 years at an average of $600 a month per loan for an average of 5 years each. They carry an average credit card balance of $6,000 at 22% for most of their adult life. They take out 2 personal loans totaling $30,000 for home improvements and a consolidation at an average of 15%. Total interest paid to lenders over 30 years, approximately $87,000. Total foregone investment growth from those payments at 8%, approximately $210,000. Combined true cost of their debt lifestyle, roughly $297,000. Person B uses debt the way wealthy people do. They buy 1 used car for cash every several years. They carry no credit card balances. They take out 1 mortgage on a rental property that cash flows positively from month 1. They invest the money that Person A sends to lenders every month. Over the same 30 years, Person B's invested surplus, the money not paid in interest, grows to approximately $350,000 in additional wealth. Same income, same neighborhood. The gap between them at retirement, over $600,000, created entirely by how they related to debt. Here is what you do with everything you just learned. This week, do the debt audit. Every debt, for pieces of information, balance, rate what it financed, is it producing value? Categorize each one, working for me, working against me, or monitor carefully. This takes 30 minutes. Do it before the week ends. Calculate your debt-to-income ratio. Total monthly debt payments divided by gross monthly income. Write the number down. Know where you stand this month. If you have any debt above 15% interest, treat it as a financial emergency and redirect every available dollar toward it. Calculate the true cost using the full interest plus foregone investment growth method. Let that number make the decision for you. If you do not carry high-interest debt, identify whether you are capturing all available good debt benefits, specifically, whether you are maximizing tax-deductible mortgage interest, whether any low-rate debt should be carried while surplus goes to investments, and whether there are productive assets you could access with responsibly structured debt. This quarter, read the terms on every debt you carry. Know the rate, the remaining term, and the total interest you will pay if you make only minimum payments. For any high-rate debt, call and ask for a rate reduction. Issuers often reduce rates for customers with good payment history who ask directly. This year, make a plan to eliminate all debt in the working against me category. Use the avalanche method, highest rate first. Set a target payoff date for each one. Watch your debt-to-income ratio fall. Watch your monthly cash flow free up. Watch that freed cash flow go to work in investments instead of to lenders. And carry this question with you into every financial decision from here on. Not, can I afford the payment? But, will this produce more than it costs? Answer that question honestly every time. And debt will never trap you again.